Alafu sasa katika uhusiano wetu baada ya handshake na Rais Kenyatta, tulianza kufanya kazi kwa uwazi na ukaribu na yeye. Na tuseme tu kweli, you know, many of us tulianza kufanya kazi karibu na yeye, wakati mwingine tunamconsult kwa maneno fulani. I remember vividly kwamba wakati tulikuwa na shida ya COVID, first of all, President Kenyatta instructed us to brief the opposition. Even before the handshake, President Kenyatta had this interest that when we are taking a major action, like even in Dusi too, I was a minister for security. Alituambia, you know, tukishamaliza maneno tunafanya, give Raila a call and mention to him this is what we are doing and so on, ili nao waelewe. So even during COVID, President Kenyatta instructed us that we could, you know, brief Raila and discuss with him a number of things.
Hata kabla handshake ilikuwa kwa nawasiliana.
Yeah, lakini COVID ilikuwa baada ya handshake. Lakini mbele ya handshake, we could, you know, like when there's a major, you know, activity that you have to do, especially in the security sector, either myself or some senior security officer would be asked to, you know, brief him, let him know as the leader of the opposition, because you see, hiyo ndio desturi na namna ya demokrasia. You know, in democratic practice all over the world is like that. Even in the UK, for example, those that hold formal positions or in government, you know, in leadership, when you open yourself up for advice, when you have a respectful attitude and you talk to other people, even if they're in the opposition, you know, people love their country enough to give you, you know, opinions. And that for Raila also means one thing. He was very patriotic in the way he treated you know, Kenya. He always spoke about Kenya. Is probably one of the very few opposition leaders you will meet who talks to you about the country before they even criticize you, or before they blame you, or before they tell you about their tribe and so on and so forth. Was very, very patriotic for me, which was inspiring lesson for me and so on. Then we worked together. One thing that working at the center of government affords you is unaelewa nchi in a different way. You come to understand the country very deeply and very closely. And then you come to understand the challenges of the country. And you ask yourself the question, can I do this differently? Can I continue doing this for the better of the country? Tuliingia katika serikali when we had several challenges, and under our president we made very significant steps in development and did in some cases fairly radical actions in moving the country to the next level. Of course, the first worry that everybody had is that, okay, President Kenyatta served his 2 terms. What will happen to the continuity of the work that we have started, some of it that is not complete? And how will this work be institutionalized and continued so that it's safeguarded and the gains made are maintained? Then I thought at that particular time, in any case, especially after Executive Order number 1 of 2019, coordinating government, several ministries of government, the president gave me a big level of exposure, you know, even including with some of his colleague presidents in the region, you know, when he sent me to meetings with them and activities with them. So I developed you know, a great understanding of the country, and I kept asking myself, how will this work be continued? Are we going to stand up and walk away and all these reforms have to be implemented? So I thought maybe one way I could contribute to cementing these gains, deepening them, institutionalizing them, is I go into the office of the president at the end of our president's term. Is that given the experiences he had, unajua Raila alifungwa, ameteswa, you know, fighting for the democracy of this country. One thing I would like to say here today that was shocking to me, every time I analyzed a conversation with him, is that Raila was not vengeful. He was not bitter.
Hana kisasi.
Hana kisasi. In fact, for a person who suffered the way he did, you would probably hear him swearing at people, you know. Akisema nikipata nafasi nitafanya hivi, nikipata huyu nitamchukulia hivi, huyu nitamfanyia hivi. Raila was not that type of person. And that surprised me, because given the experiences he had gone through, you know, in life, tuseme tu kweli, not all of us are endowed to be of great minds and great ideals like those. There was Nelson Mandela, there was, you know, some of these people who fought for independence, there was Jomo Kenyatta, there was Jaramogi, and all these people who have made huge sacrifices on behalf of the whole, on behalf of society. Raila was in that category, you know, of statesmen. As you know, Raila taught us, the courage to seek what is right, the courage to engage in a conversation on what must be right, the courage to defend what is right. That is what Raila Odinga taught us. And one way that all of us who are engaging in public life must live is espouse and live that courage to ask what is right, desire what is right, and demand what is right. And when we do not see something that is not right, point it out without fear or favor, because it is our responsibility to do so, because we are not expatriate Kenyans. Tujakuja kutoka nje huku. We are not expatriate Kenyans. We are Kenyans as of our own right. So if there are issues, and that's why Raila never shied away from raising issues. He would say this is not right and it's got to be done. And that's one of the things that personally, mimi ningependa kuiga hiyo, to emulate him and to stay in that tradition of always seeking what is right. And if I'm the one on the other side who's being asked questions by Kenyans, to respectively answer them. Leaders are not effective because of where they come from. Raila worked with everyone. I mean, there are so many people. When you look at Nyayo Stadium there, I mean, Raila has worked virtually with everyone and engages with everyone. And he's demonstrated, and he's a guy 2 or 3 generations ahead of me. He's demonstrated clearly that ethnicity doesn't matter. You know, Rashid, the young people in this country, through, you know, even during the Gen Z's demonstrations in 2024, the focus for the Gen Z, actually, the grievance is based on voice, inclusion, and fairness. In other words, voice to be heard, to have your voice count for something in the affairs of the country. Inclusion, you know, for every one of us to realize that we are here, not by chance, but by the grace of God, we are all citizens of this country. And therefore, we have a right. That's where fairness comes in. We have a right to have a fair shot, you know, at the national cake or whatever the case may be. These are the things I was fighting for when I was Minister for Education and fighting to clean up the national examination infrastructure, so that you get your fair grade. You know, when there's fairness, we are all satisfied. The youth of this country, especially the Gen Z and everybody, they're just looking for one thing: fairness, inclusion. And then these are the principles and these are the ideals that Raila fought for. Let me go and sit for an interview about the leadership of this country. And as we have conversations about how we are going forward, especially after Raila, those words will ring at the back of our minds. You know, it's our voices being heard, it's inclusion, everyone being involved in it, it's the fairness, you know, of engagement. Is it fair for us? Because if you carried out a fair interview and you selected people on the basis of their abilities and so on, that is meritocracy. That's how this country will move forward. Tumezumbuka, and this is what Raila fought for. He fought for an environment where people are judged by the content of their character, people are judged by what they can bring to the table, not by where they come from. So my advice, as you ask me, to those who are espousing, you know, ethnicity and so on and so forth, is they have no future, period. There's no Kenya they are going to have. We're having a generation, a huge generation of Kenyans who are growing up, who are tribeless, who don't care for it, to whom religion and ethnicity and so on mean nothing. They are looking for ability, opportunity, fairness, and then inclusion in what's going on. They are seeking their voices to be heard. So if you are going to be stuck, you know, talking about tribes and so on, you have no future. In this country, you will have no future because the country is moving in a particular direction. And if you are moving against that direction, I don't see how you can have a future. Railaism, you know, if I may call it, or Odingaism as it were, Odingaism was about fairness. Odingaism was about meritocracy. Odingaism was about inclusion. You know, every time you talk about it, that's what Raila stood for.
Tuna kibarua cha kubadilika.
Kibarua cha kubadilika, na tena kuna swali tunapaswa kujiuliza kila wakati. It's this famous saying in management that if people do not miss anything when you leave, then you are not needed in the first place. So if you work in, for example, in a public office for 30 years, 40 years, you are around for 30, 40 years, you are here for 25 years doing things around, and when you leave, there's nothing people miss, or even there's nothing people can remember from the things you have been doing, then you are not needed in the first place. So Raila's life is telling us to ask ourselves that question. What will we be needed for? And we can answer that question when we have the opportunity now.